you're thinking, why do I feel so behind? Like, it looks like God is blessing everybody else in what they want. Why isn't he blessing what I want? And that makes you want to try to catch up. But the more you try to catch up, the more that you fall behind. My name is Carver. I used to wrestle with these same questions all of the time, but I don't anymore. And if you stay to the end of the video, I promise you won't have to either. So where do we start? Well, when we're a baby, we know nothing. And so we literally have to catch up. Like, we can't even wipe our own butts. Somebody has to do it for us. And then eventually we learn to wipe our own butt. And then we learn to tie our own shoes. And then we learn to read. And then we learn to drive. And then we learn, we get better at things. That's the point. But the whole time, the world is saying you're not enough. Throughout every stage. I mean, think about it. When you're in high school, you have to constantly meet expectation. You have to follow the rules. You have to get the grades. There's social dynamics that you have no idea what's going on. And so everybody is saying like, hey, you messed up here. You got to do better, right? So you're not enough. You have to perform better. You get to college, same thing, intensified. You're not enough. You have to do better. You get to your first job. You've never been in a job before. You have no experience doing a job. So you're not enough. You have to do better. Okay. And then you get married and all of a sudden it's not just one, it's two. You have another life that you have to take care of. So obviously you've never done that before. Obviously it's not enough. You spent the whole time just trying to take care of yourself. Now you got to take care of two. So you got to perform better. And then you have kids. Now you have a family. It's not just one. It's not just two. Maybe it's 3, 4, even 5. And then if you really go up the chain, you get into like having your own business and then you're taking care of other people's family. It's like the world is constantly screaming, you're not enough, perform better. And so it's easy when you're down on yourself thinking like, am I even qualified for this? Am I even going to make it through to this? Am I even capable of this? I don't know if I have it in me. To look on Instagram and see some dude from high school and he's got it made. He's got the house, he's got the car. His family looks happy all the time. And you're looking at the snapshot of his life and you're thinking to yourself, why is God's hand over him? It looks so easy for him. Is God's hand over him? Is he blessing him more than me? Like, what's going on here? And so this comparison game is very real and it's very hard because it's easy to look at somebody else and see where they're at and think to yourself, man, it just looks like they're winning. And so how do you know that you're not? Well, first we got to look at what we call the metric of success, right? If you're going to compare yourself to anybody, you have to know what you're comparing yourself for or off of. And that's what the metric of success is. So metric simply means measure. So if you were to think of like, what is a measurement? Measurement is how you know where you are in comparison to anything else. Meaning if you look at a map, the only reason that the you are here spot matters is because it's in proportion to where everything else is. Like walking through a mall, you only know where the hot topic is compared to the food court to where you are. So if you just had the you are here and then you took the hot topic in the food court away, you wouldn't know where you are. It just says you are here. Like you have to compare yourself off of other things. And this, by the way, this is what bats do with echolocation. They're going through a cave. They can't see literally. They'll send out a signal and then the signal will hit the wall of the cave and come back. And the bat will be like, okay, based on how long that signal took to get to the cave and back, I know exactly where I'm at in comparison to the wall. So we send out signals. They come back to us and we know where we are in comparison to them. This is how we know who we are in comparison to God, right? Like, how do you know who you are? Because God tells you who you are. If you didn't have God to tell you who you are, you would need to rely on something else. So what I'm saying is we measure everything. So how do you know you're not successful compared to John from high school who looks like he's got it made? What measurement are you basing that off of? Like, why when you look at him, do you let his success, his definition, define who you are? You see what I'm saying? So we got to define what our metric of success is. Success is the goal. Success is the win. So like, if we were to write it, Success is the goal, and the measurement is the distance. We'll call it the distance. Okay, so if you don't know what the goal is, what the win is, what you're trying to aim for, like specifically, when you look at other people, you may get the measurement right, but you may get the actual win wrong. Meaning, like, if he's got a cool car, you may be jealous of his cool car. You may be like, dude, that's a dope car. If I had that car, my life would be made. And then you really think about it, it's like, okay, imagine that you have the car. Now what? Is your life made? Well, if you're a Christian, then no. Because that's not supposed to be what the win is. That's not the metric of success. His car is cool, but to base your entire success based off of his cool car, it doesn't make any sense because you're playing a different game, right? So you have to make sure that what you see as success is the right metric so that you can actually accurately place the distance between you and the win. If you got the wrong goal, the wrong success, and you look at somebody else who's farther down the line than you in that, of course he's going to beat you in that. You weren't even trying to get a cool car. Why would you determine your success based off of a cool car? It's the wrong goal. You weren't even playing that game in the first place. How are you going to win? So we need to get specific on what we're talking about. Like, what do you measure your success off of? What is the goal? Once you figure out the goal, then you can figure out the distance between you and meeting that goal. So let's do this. Let's go through specific areas, because if we were to think about what is Christian success? Christian success, the goal is obedience to God. In fact, Philippians 2, 8-9 literally says, in being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. Therefore, God exalted him to the highest place and gave him the name that is above every name. This is Jesus. Jesus is the model. He's perfect. He says that he humbled himself by becoming obedient. And so God gave him what? The highest place, the ultimate success. So obviously we can't be perfect like Jesus, but we could try. So if Christian success is obedience to God, then you should be measuring where you are in comparison to Jesus to figure out what the discrepancy is, to figure out how far do you not meet that goal, not the cool car. So you might as well not even look at John, right? You should be looking at Jesus. So that's Philippians 2, 8-9. So let's apply this. Let's get super specific because you can't hit a target that you don't see. Okay? Blurry vision creates blurry results. Blurry vision creates blurry direction. Clear vision creates clear results. Clear vision creates clear direction. Success thrives in the specific and it dies in the vague. Why? Because it's the same photo. One of them's blurry and one of them's 4K. Which one are you going to see better? So you can't have vague goals. You can't have vague metrics of success. You have to figure out exactly what you're aiming for. If you want exact results, you got to have exact measures. So we're going to measure it right now. So God category is obedience to God, right? But that's pretty vague because you could say okay, what does that mean for my family? What does that mean for my friends? What does that mean for my hobbies? What does that mean for work? Right? So each of these categories, it gets more specific. I want to be obedient to God in my family. I want to be obedient to God in my work. I want to be obedient to God in my friends. I want to be obedient to God in my hobbies. What does that mean? It gets more specific as you go down the chain, right? So then you could even go more specific and get more clear. What does it mean to be obedient to God in my friendships? Well, I should be the type of friend that is loving, right? So good. I should be a good friend, not a bad friend, a good friend. What makes a good friend? Get even more specific. I show up. How about that? And then I'm generous. We'll use those two as the example. So what before was I should be obedient to God, very vague, very umbrella, very universal, not very specific. Now I'm obedient to God in my friendships by being a good friend, by showing up and being generous. So if you notice, when you go from vague to specific, it gets easier to follow the direction of what it means to be obedient to God inside of your friendships, because you've specified with clarity. It's not blurry anymore. It's clear. It's exact. So the more exact you can make the direction, the easier it is to win. Why? Because you know what success is, and you know the distance between you and getting there because you've specified it. It's like looking at the map. You are here in comparison to being obedient to God inside of your friendships. Not very specific. You know you are here by showing up for your friends and being generous for your friends so that you can be obedient to God. It's ground up. So you have the universal, like, I want to ultimately reach this goal, obedience to God, but I want to specifically meet it inside of my friendships by being a good friend, by showing up and being generous. And if you do the showing up and the being generous, you go up the chain and ultimately reach obedience to God. We have to reverse engineer it. Most of you are trying to win and you don't know what winning looks like. Like, break it down. It's like you're trying to love your neighbor, but you don't even know what that means. You don't know what it looks like to love your neighbor, like physical actions, literal decisions. Define it. Make it specific, because you cannot hit a target that you don't see. You have to be able to see it. Okay, so that's the first thing. The second thing is, let's say like you're looking at the guy and you're saying, oh man, no, he's a great representation of Jesus. He's just got it. He's Tim Tebow. He's got it all. He's got the fame, the fortune, the money. Man, this guy's got it going. He's organizations that help people. I'm never going to be like that. Of course you're not going to be like that, because God has a different game for you to play. If you compare where you are today to where Tim Tebow is today, you are playing the wrong game by default, because Tim Tebow is playing a different game than you. In fact, just replace that name with anything. Anytime you compare, what you're doing is you're basing your success off of their game. But that's not your game. You have a different game that you're playing. Meaning, like, everybody else has a specific plan and purpose from God. A specific calling, specific gifts, specific weaknesses, specific needs, specific provisions. Everything is catered to who they are because they are a unique person. So God has a unique plan. So if you were to look at somebody's life and say, I want to be like them, I want their exact unique plan, that's like saying, I want their lottery ticket. It's already been cashed. You can't have it. It doesn't make any sense because you're not playing the same game. You have to look at your game. And the best way to look at your game is, like, if Jesus is the goal because he's the most obedient to God, then you go towards that. So how do you know if you're winning? Well, you don't look at other people. You look at who you used to be. So who were you last year? Who were you last month? That's how you know if you're winning. Because as long as you're making progress, you're actually winning compared to who you used to be. I'll give you an example of this. So when I was 21-ish, 21, 22, I weighed 137 pounds. I really liked secular activities, party mode. I liked to party. I had no home. I had no job and no plan. And I couldn't even maintain a successful relationship with my now wife, but my girlfriend at the time, because I was just all over the place. And I was sitting in a hot tub. A guy from church gave me a place to stay, and eventually he gave me a job. But I was sitting in his hot tub trying to figure out life. And I was reading my Bible, and I remember reading this verse right here, James 1:5. If any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. I also read when Solomon asked for wisdom, and it was given to him, along with everything else. And I thought, if it worked for Solomon, maybe it'll work for me. And so I asked God, I prayed. I was like, God, I don't know what I'm doing. Obviously, I've been screwing everything up. But if you can give me wisdom, I would be very grateful. The next day, I started thinking of like, what's the purpose behind things? What's the why behind things? And then I had a phrase come up in my head. It's like, pay attention. I should just pay attention. I should pay attention to everything. That I've never done those things before. Fast forward 10 years. It's like, I'm not the same guy. That person's dead. I don't know who he is anymore. I weighed 137. I weigh 175 now. I work out for fun. It's like, I never read a book in my life. I have all these books right here, and I'm constantly thinking and studying. I couldn't keep a relationship. I've been married for 5 years. I have 2 kids. I couldn't keep a job. I own a business. It's like, I never went to church. I serve in the kids ministry. I'm not the same guy. I make videos for fun talking about Christianity when all I used to do was party. Like, that person is dead. So am I successful compared to Tim Tebow? That's the wrong game. Am I successful to who I was 10 years ago? Yes. I'm killing it. I'm doing great. Why? How do I know that? Is it because I'm arrogant? No. Is it because I'm like got money on my mind? No. It's none of that stupid stuff. It's because success to me is obedience to God. Am I doing that more than I was 10 years ago? Yes. I'm winning. Why? Because in comparison, measuring the distance between who I was versus who I am versus who I'm going to try to be, which is Jesus, I am closer. So, yes, I am winning. Why am I going to compare myself to some other dude's game when think about this, just relatively. If he's farther than me to Jesus, but he hasn't even made the distance that I have, technically I have been doing more because I started farther back than him. Let's say I spent the last 10 years constantly trying and I've made more ground than him, but he started farther than me. Technically, I'm winning because I've actually done more progress. But doesn't matter anyway, because all you can look at is who you were. So if you, just be honest with yourself right now. If you were to look back 1 year, just 1 year, are you the same person? Because if you're the same person, that's bad. You should be a better version of yourself because we have perfection in sight. The goal is Jesus. So if you're the same person you were last year, that means you haven't made any progress towards the character of Jesus, which means that yes, you should feel behind. However, if you are trying, I believe that God is going to finish a good work in you because that's what he says. So, you're not behind because the creator of the universe is working with you. And he says, if any of you lacks wisdom, that you should ask him and he will give it to you generously. So there's no way that you would be behind because God has your back and he's pulling you forward. You're winning. So don't look at what other people are doing. Don't look at John from high school in his cool car and think, oh man, I'm behind. You're not behind. You have a unique catered plan by God specific to you. The only way that you know if you're behind is if you look a year ago and you're like, man, I didn't even try. I could have tried harder. God just wants a willing heart and he'll pull you forward. So make the metrics specific. Know what it means to be obedient to God in your family, in your friends, in your hobbies, and your work. Make it as specific as possible so that you know what you're aiming for. Then do that. And stop looking at everybody else. Only look at who you were last year and who you're going to be next year and try to make it as much like Jesus as possible. That's how you win.